instrumental in helping their family with that. So we're thankful for that. But anyway, we appreciate you tuning in, and we ask you to maybe click on if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, just click on like or put a little comment on there so that we'll have an indication there that you are indeed watching. So also got Joe Sandage with us. I asked Joe to join us. Joe he's just passionate about missions. Those in the church, you know that. He and Paulette, man, they do everything in the world to be involved with missions. They travel on mission trips and do everything that they can. So I thought it'd be great to have Joe sit in with our meeting. And he says he doesn't have any questions, but we'll see if we can pull a couple out of him or something here in a little bit. But thank you all for tuning in. And Kevin, what a blessing it is to have you with us today. I'm gonna hold this here just for just complete openness here. The microphone is a little. We're waiting for a better microphone to come in. It's been back ordered, so I'm trying to use it like this, and I'll kind of be pointing at it, whoever, so we can get the best sound out of that. But glad to have you with us today. And why don't you tell us just briefly, and we'll come back to this a little bit later, but tell us briefly about the ministry that you're involved in, because our church, we give monthly support to your ministry.
Well, Pastor Steve, thank you for having me today. So excited to kind of get out of my home and drive up past the lake, and come see you guys. And nice to meet Joe as well. So Christian Adoption Services, 41 years of ministry, and been in North Carolina since 1989 in Matthews. And so God has used that ministry in an amazing way. Now, I've only been a part of the ministry for 4 years, and that 4 years has flown by. I remember talking to you right after I came on board, and y'all were one of the first churches. Westport was one of the first churches to come on board to say, we believe in what you do and we want to help you missionally. And so that's been a real blessing, and God has expanded that over the years as more churches have come on board. But we're so excited about how God is using Westport to come alongside of us. And we basically, our mission is this: to connect vulnerable children with Christian families and build God's kingdom by doing that. And we do it one of 3 different ways. One, we work with Christian families that God's called to adopt. 2, we believe the children that are placed in these Christian homes will hopefully come to know the Lord one day. They're exposed to truth. And so, again, we're talking about eternity for these children. And then 3rd, as we think about the moms we work with here in North Carolina that are pregnant, that are going through a very difficult time, it's an opportunity for us to love on them and to care for them during a very difficult time in their lives. And so God's really using that in an amazing way with these ladies that we have the opportunity to minister to.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm sure that that our folks would love to hear a little bit about your story, and let's kind of go back to the beginning, where you're from, where you grew up, what that was like as far as your exposure to Christ and the gospel, and what that was like growing up. And let's just hear your story here for a few minutes.
Absolutely. So I was born in Portsmouth, Virginia, but I reject Virginia. I'm a North Carolina Tar Heel fan, so I wish I was born right across the line, but I was born in Virginia.
Joe, don't hold that against me. Joe, he's a Duke guy.
He's a Duke. Oh, goodness. Here, let me move a little bit closer. Just kidding, Joe. So there's a funny story behind that, too, I'll share with you about sports. But I was born in Virginia. My dad was called in the ministry shortly after I was born.
So he was a pastor?
He was a pastor for over 40-some years. Wow. That's right. So I was a PK. And so we moved back into North Carolina very quickly. Dad went to seminary at Southeastern and began churches in Eastern North Carolina.
And how old were you when he went to seminary?
So I was young. I was like 5.
Okay.
Yeah, I was young.
You don't remember much more than...
No, not a lot about that. A few years in Virginia very early, and then we moved to North Carolina, and that's kind of where I remember a lot of things there. And we lived with my grandmother and so forth in Eastern North Carolina. And then Dad started pastoring some small churches while in seminary, and then ultimately landed in Apex, North Carolina, which is right outside of Raleigh, and was there for 27 and a half years as senior pastor. And so I consider Apex home, and my dad still lives up in the Apex Cary area. And my sister also married a pastor in Cary, and so that's kind of my home base. And then so I went Apex High School, graduated, and then God called me to go to Gardner-Webb University. And so I went there. Wasn't knowing what God wanted me to do, but I served the Lord there from the standpoint of, felt like at that point going into business administration And so I got a degree in business. And then my senior year, while I was still there, the Lord called me into ministry. I remember it very clearly. I was in a revival service at Apex Baptist Church in the fall of my senior year. And it was very clear, the message that was shared that night, that God was calling me. But I was real anxious about it because I knew I was going to graduate with this business degree. It's like, well, how does that all come into play into what God's doing? So I didn't tell anybody. And I remember going back, and I kind of, all of us have kind of gone through experiences, good and bad. For me, I had seen how hard a pastor's life was by just living in it. And my mom and dad were great, godly people, but church world can be tough at times. And so it's not a 9-to-5 job, as you very well know, And so after kind of thinking through that in my own, I guess, the flesh at that point, I rejected God's call. I didn't tell anybody, and I kind of said, just push to the side and let's just continue to focus on school. And so I kind of did the Jonah experience, when God said to go to Nineveh, he went the opposite way. That's kind of what I did. It was about a 6-month season there of just turning away from God. And God he didn't give up on me, though. And I'm very thankful for that. And he taught me some valuable lessons through that, what I might call wilderness experience. And so I yielded to God's call. I remember calling my dad and telling him what was going on after 6 months. And so I graduated Gardner-Webb and went straight to Southeastern Seminary in Wake Forest and loved it. Was there for 3 years, got my MDiv from there, got married in the process to Kim. And from there, I served 2 years in children and youth ministry while I was in school, getting my MDiv. And then God called me to South Carolina, and I served in South Carolina in different churches along the way. I was associate pastor at a church near Spartanburg, was there for 4 years, and then went to First Baptist Florence. And God taught me a whole lot at First Baptist Florence. I was there almost 7 years, about 6.5 years, and came as associate, then became interim, and then senior pastor while I was there, and learned a whole lot about ministry in that situation. And then the Lord led me from there up to the Charlotte area, which my wife is originally from Charlotte, and served on campus with First Baptist Church Indian Trail. And they were starting a brand new campus right across the state line in South Carolina, and asked me to be the campus pastor. And so I served there for 5.5 years. It was really refreshing for me, having been in a large church, and to come into that situation. We had 20 people, and we renamed the church, relocated the church, and then grew it over 5.5 years to about 250 people. Baptized about 100 in that time in a very rural area in Pageland, South Carolina. And God really blessed there. And then I left there and went to First Baptist Charlotte, as you mentioned, and served there for 4 years as associate pastor before God led me to Christian Adoption Services. Now, how I got here is a total God story. If you'd have met me 5 years ago...
Well, let me ask you, when were you in Florence?
So I was in Florence from 2000 to 2007.
Well, that overlaps a little bit. I was in Laurinburg.
Okay.
I
know Laurinburg very well.
I was in Laurinburg from about 99 to 2008.
Okay.
And it was... there was a lot of trips down to Florence.
Yep.
We had a lot of people in our church at Stewartsville Baptist there in Laurinburg. We were pretty close to the South Carolina line.
Right.
And we had a lot, probably, I'd say maybe a third of our congregation seemed like that they came in from South Carolina.
How about that?
So when you get some of those down in South Carolina, when they had health issues, they would go down to Florence a lot of times to the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
So I made a lot of trips down
We might have ran into each other and didn't know it.
We probably passed each other in the hospital down there.
McLeod and Carolinas. I know both those hospitals very well. I was in those quite a bit. And matter of fact, in the Laurinburg area, so what was interesting back then is we were on live TV. So you wouldn't have known it because you were preaching, at your church. But we were on WBTW, which is Channel 13, CBS affiliate. And so First Baptist Florence had live TV. I tell folks all the time, I think I was more popular with the TV audience than I was with my own church, because we had call in and we had a lot of salvations through our television ministry, And so that was a pretty neat time. It was real nervous. I remember preaching on TV for the very first time live, and I had a countdown clock and everything, and it would come on. You had 56 minutes from when it started. Right. And of course, I would get the service at different times every Sunday because of the music and the prayers and all that. And so there would be some times when I'd get it, it'd be 32 minutes and then count down, or some it'd be 25 minutes. And, having to speak to folks on the TV. and tell them, hey, we're getting ready to go off the air, but to call our hotline and toll-free number, and people pray with you and help you. But that was a great learning experience for me. I was like 33 at the time, 32, 33 years old.
You're talking about the time countdown and all. Something interesting. When I was in seminary, for a part of that time, I worked at Liberty University, and I worked for the television ministry. I had an electronics background from the Air Force, so I worked in the television ministry. And part of what I did was on Sunday mornings, I would go in and help set up the cameras because Dr. Falwell, he was nationwide or really international. But there were times that they would have me sit down on the front row, and I'd have headsets on, and we'd have these cue cards. They didn't have this on monitors or anything.
Right.
And it'd be so while he's preaching, I'm literally telling Dr. Falwell when he's got to stop preaching.
Right.
So I'm holding up 10-minute card.
I know.
They're like 5 minutes. So I'd hold up the 5-minute card. 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Yes.
So I like to joke that I literally got to tell Falwell when to quit preaching.
Stop. Shut it down. That's great.
But anyway, so you ended up at First Baptist Charlotte as associate pastor.
Yeah, I was just head down doing what God was calling me to do. I was called the next generation pastor, which put me over 45 and under, and preaching for Pastor Mark when he was gone. It was a sweet time.
Now, when did you first start pastoring?
So my first pastorate was in 2004, and so
as an associate,
senior pastor at that point. But my first, when I went on staff in Spartanburg after I graduated seminary, was in '96.
'96. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're kind of parallel there. I started pastoring in '93.
'93. So, that's when I first started seminary. Was in '93.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I was at First Baptist Charlotte, and God was blessing, and then someone on the board at Christian Adoption Services, who was a friend of mine who went to seminary together. He was actually on the board of directors and had adopted through the ministry and was serving there, and called me and was talking to me about this position of president. Did I know anybody? And I actually recommended a friend of mine for the position, and they did talk to him. But after talking with him, a conversation happened between me and the board member again. And I felt like the Lord might be calling me to pursue this. And so I met with him, and we prayed about it. And he said, I need a resume, if you want to pursue this, because we're narrowing in. And the reason all this happened is the CAS, Christian Adoption Service, was founded by a sweet couple, Jim and Doris Woodward. And they were retiring. They were pushing up in age, and they were ready to retire. And so that precipitated our board of directors to kind of say, okay, what are we going to do? This husband-wife team has led this thing for 37 years. Right. We've got to figure this thing out. And that's when they came up with the model. Let's hire a president, and maybe we look for a pastor, somebody that could pastor the ministry, and really get out and connect with churches and connect with the community. Because it really, Steve, was one of the best kept secrets in Charlotte. I didn't even know about it, and I was right there in the back door.
Right.
But no fault of the founders. They were so busy on the internal side. One was executive director, so they both had social work degrees. One was executive director and one was domestic coordinator. They didn't have time to get out, in the community. And so they came up with this idea, maybe we'll find a pastor or someone like that in ministry that could come and lead this thing that doesn't have anything necessarily to do with social work or adoption. And so long story short, after praying about it, I decided, okay, Lord, I want to be obedient. I remember calling my dad, who was pastor at the time, and I called my dad and I said, Dad, this opportunity's come up, and I don't think I should. I don't know anything about adoption. I've got 3 biological kids. He said, you shouldn't say no. You shouldn't say no. You should pray about it. And I was like, well, that's a good idea. We should pray about things. It was, I was like, pastor preaching to the pastor. And so I was like, you're right, Dad. I shouldn't just dismiss it because I don't know anything about it. Yeah. And so after praying about it, I was like, okay, Lord, I want to be obedient. I really wasn't expecting God to lead me that way, but I was like, I don't want to not miss out on something he might want to teach me. And so I turned in my resume, and then that set forth a chain of events, and the Lord allowed me to interview and so forth, and then they offered me the position. And I was like, okay, Lord. And what happened during that time, Joe and Steve, it turned into a full-blown call. It started out of no to intrigue, to obedience, and ultimately to me saying, yes, God has called me to a full-blown call. Just like any other church I had served in. I was like, okay, Lord, I'm going to step out on faith and trust you. And I remember that first week stepping into the office in March of 16. I was like, Lord, Are you sure? I mean, again, it was like drinking water out of a fire hose. I knew nothing about adoption other than the folks in my churches that had adopted, through the years. But it was something else. But God had me there, and He had a purpose and a plan. I'm very thankful. On this side of it is so rewarding, and I'm pastoring this ministry, and I love it. I'm very passionate about what God is doing through this, and adoption is the gospel.
Yeah.
So
What a picture of the gospel.
It is. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Joe, any questions?
I'm curious as to the children that you serve. How do those come about?
Yeah, it's a great question, Joe. So we have 3 programs now. One is international. So those are children. I had the opportunity, Joe, to go to the Philippines in September of this past year, and I visited 10 orphanages over there in Manila, the greater Manila area. And the need is so great. So these are children anywhere between the ages of 2 all the way to 17, and they're just been abandoned or their parents are dead, and they're just waiting to be adopted. So that's an opportunity for families that feel led to go internationally. And Philippines is our #1 country, and we have several other countries we work with. The babies here, so typically in North Carolina, and we're also licensed in South Carolina, we have the opportunity to work with moms who are pregnant in both states. And so the referrals come in a lot of different ways. We have hospitals, so we call those surprise babies. So we get to know the pregnancy centers, the local pregnancy centers, and get to meet these folks. And again, the pregnancy centers focus on stopping abortion, right? But then as they walk a mom through that and they don't have an abortion, some of these moms aren't capable of parenting. And so that's when they'll call us and say, okay, we have a mom that really wants to place her child for adoption, but is not in a position to parent. So they'll call us, and then we work with that mom going forward. But also hospitals, we get surprise babies where a mom, and I'll give you an example of that. We had a mom a couple of weeks ago in North Carolina that didn't even know she was pregnant. She was 16 years old, and shows up at the hospital, and they say, you're pregnant, and her mother are there, and they're like, you're not in a position to parent this child. And so the hospital, they give them a list of adoption agencies in North Carolina that are licensed. And she saw our name, and she said, I want this child in a Christian family. And so they call our social worker. Our social worker goes right to the hospital, meets with the family. She picks up one of our families that's a waiting family with us. And then that child's in a Christian home right now. So that happens. But we also, we have a hotline. So we have to spend a lot of money on advertising because most moms that are in difficult situations, whether they're homeless or they're in a drug rehab, they have a phone. And so they'll go and Google, give my baby up for adoption, or adoption, place my baby for adoption. And we have to fight for that front page to where they see our number and they can just click to call. And we have a hotline. We have about 7 workers across North and South Carolina that carry this hotline, and they'll call them any time of the day. And then we're able to minister to them and hopefully meet with them very quickly and to love on them. And some of those moms might be 6 weeks pregnant. They just found out they're pregnant. Some could be 40 weeks pregnant, at the end. Right. And so it's an opportunity for us to minister to those moms. And last year, Joe, we had an opportunity. We had 128 moms in the Carolinas that we met with. So they not only called, but some call and we don't. They just want to know more information, but we don't meet with them. But we had 128 moms that our workers met with. Out of that group, we had 33 that placed their child with a family through Christian Adoption Services. And out of that group, 4 gave their life to Christ out of that group last year. And that's a huge praise. And so for us, it's salt and light. Most of these moms don't know the Lord, and we're there to love on them and to care for them, even if they don't place, Right. And so just seeing those 4 come to know Christ is a blessing. Every year I've been there, we've had salvations, just ministering to these moms.
Right.
And then the last one is Baptist Children's Home, which is an incredible organization here in North Carolina. We are a new partner with BCH, and what that allows us to do is to minister to children that are in the foster care system, that are in custody of DSS. And these are children that are could be living on the campus. For example, Thomasville is their main. There's 21 different homes across North Carolina. And so these children have been cleared, the ones that have been cleared for adoption, the parents' rights have been terminated. We then are recruiting families to foster to adopt. And so that's brand new, and we're very excited to have that exclusive partnership with BCH that helps us to place these children. They could be any age as well, to place them in a Christian home.
Yeah. So now you said 33 through North and South Carolina, but that doesn't include adoptions that may have taken place through international.
That does not. That does not. And those have slowed, Pastor Steve. And so sadly, if you go and Google international adoptions over the last 15 years, United States, you're going to see, at a peak, 15 years ago, 10,000 children coming from different countries down to, in the last year or two, like 2,000.
Why is that?
It's the countries, they're closing adoptions. Some of the countries close adoptions. For us, we only work with Hague accredited, and so there's certain countries that are still doing adoptions, but it's not ethically where we would want them to be. Meaning, if a family wants to adopt internationally with us, they're not going to take a suitcase full of cash on a plane and show up, and that everything's done on the up and up. And so those countries have closed to where many of them are not Hague accredited, and we're Hague accredited, which means what we call the IAMI, which is a body that oversees the United States agencies to make sure we do things right, but also the countries in Hague that make sure they do things right on their side. And so it's sad. It's just closing the gap. It's making it harder and harder. I think the United States is making it harder on our side, and the countries are making it harder. And it's sad because when I went over to the Philippines, I had children just all over me. I was holding two at a time, and they're grabbing onto my leg. They break your heart. Break your heart. I mean, these kids, not only we believe they need a home, but we want them in a Christian home to be exposed to the truth of the gospel.
Right.
So
yeah. Wow. Well, that's eye opening.
It is.
And man, I'm glad that you're in a position like that.
Absolutely.
So, what are different things churches do that minister? I know that the financial side is a critical part of that, but I'm sure there's other ways that churches can be involved, and it might be something that we need to be thinking about at Westport. Maybe if we become aware of some of the other opportunities to help out, that maybe some of our people would want to get involved in that way.
Absolutely. Prayer is number one. I mean, the spiritual warfare side of what we do. I mean, as a pastor for all those years, I preached on spiritual warfare. I believe in it. I know you do. I see it so much in just the dysfunction that's in our society, and the evil one hates these moms coming to know Christ, hates these children to be in a place of stability and to be exposed to truth. And so we're up against it. So knowing the folks at Westport are praying for this ministry and praying for protection for our workers and praying for these moms, that they'll call us instead of some other agency, that maybe doesn't care about their spiritual side. And so the prayer is number one, absolutely number one. And so we need those prayers from God's people. Two, so there's many ways. Financially helps us being a nonprofit, private agency, 501c3. The dollars that come in, again, help us to accomplish our mission. To build God's kingdom by connecting those children with Christian families.
So when our people give here at Westport just their regular offerings, the way we do that, we've got a percentage of our budget.
Yes.
That goes
That's
to
right.
the Christian adoption services. So that fluctuates.
Yes.
We sometimes churches will have in their budget a certain amount.
Right.
But we base our missions giving on a
the more that everybody
so we need
gives.
to be praying that our people give.
Yeah,
right?
the more everybody gives, the higher that percent that goes up.
But in all seriousness, anybody in our church that gives an offering to our
they're
church,
giving to CAS.
They are in.
That's awesome. I love that.
They're supporting.
I love that.
Or your ministry.
Absolutely, and that's a tremendous blessing. It really is. And those dollars are used in different ways to minister to moms. So we'll take risk that other agencies won't take. So I'll give you an example of that. We have a mom right here in the Charlotte area right now. This is real time stuff, okay? Without giving any names or anything like that. But she went to have an abortion here in Charlotte, and they told her, again, through this COVID-19 stuff, right? And was told she was too far along. Praise God, right? She was too far along. She would have had an abortion. And then through a connection of another church that's a partner church that someone had visited there, called our hotline and said, hey, I've tried to have an abortion. I can't parent this child. My boyfriend's going to jail. I mean, all again, dysfunction, capital D, right? We need your help. And so she came. Our folks met with her, and she has an adoption plan in place now. She's due in July, and so because her boyfriend, is in jail, she has financial needs, and so what we're doing is we're helping pay her rent. We're helping take care of basic needs. There are certain things the state of North Carolina allows us as a licensed agency to do. You can't give money,
Right.
but you can pay for shelter and food and different things. And so we're doing that. Our folks are ministering to her, taking her to the doctor and doing those things. And so now here's where the risk comes in. So in North Carolina, that when that baby's born, she will pick a family soon, and when that baby's born, she has 7 days that she can change her mind. That's the state law. And so let's say that baby's placed with a family, and then during that 7 days she does change her mind, which it does happen, and we can't control that. The monies that have been given to support her, not only in the spiritual element of that, the salt and light side is important too, but if she changes her mind, we don't bill the family for that.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time this happened, I remember thinking, Lord, this is not a good business model, I mean, losing money, because it can add up, like $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000, over a period of a pregnancy, depending on when we're involved in it. And I just remember talking to the Lord about it, and I remember the Lord just saying, Kevin, your job is to be salt, light, and minister to these moms. And I'm going to bless CAS and do what I've called you to do, to take those risks, whereas other agencies wouldn't do that because they don't want to risk losing money. And so, but if she did change her mind, kind of the thought process of there is, okay, that family doesn't lose money, because other agencies, they just charge the family directly and they lose the money. And then, it makes it harder on them, because adoption can be expensive.
Oh, yeah. And
so and so from that standpoint, they would go right back to the top of the list and get the next waiting baby, that would come our way. And then, so the Lord kind of convicted me that it's for the kingdom. And again, you never know, like that mom, if a mom does change her mind, where the Lord, like as we plant seeds, and then somebody comes behind us down the line and waters that even more, and that girl comes to know Christ, again, you're pouring into that to that individual. And we get to heaven one day, we'll be able to see all that, and we won't know it here on this earth, but we may see that someone came behind us, and because of our love and caring for her and sharing the gospel and the truth of how much Jesus loves them, somebody may come behind us, and that 4 might quadruple, right, from this year that we don't even know till we get to heaven. And so so from that standpoint, helping us minister to moms and take risks with moms is important from a financial standpoint. We have a birth moms retreat, and a lot of churches, they might hear about this. We give a report. I know you get our videos that we send out quarterly or so. We have a birth moms retreat coming up in July, and we'll have about 40 or 50 go on this. And these are moms that have placed with Christian Adoption Services recently, also all the way back even 20 years ago. And it's an all-expense paid trip. It's about a $10,000 expense. And so some churches like to come alongside and say, we want to help with that particular event. And they'll just designate money to that to help offset the cost. Because these moms, again, some of them, they just repeat and get in bad situations. And this is like their vacation. And they get to come together. They get letters and pictures from their families, as these children are growing up. There's a worship experience there. Right. And every year we've had women get saved at this event. And so that's coming up in July. And that's something to pray about, too. And then I know a couple of years ago we connected with Westport with Vacation Bible School.
Yep, that's
and
right.
The children collected offerings and so forth. And so that's another neat way to teach children about adoption at a young age, and how God, as we accept Him, He adopts us. He's our Father, we're His children. And so that's another neat way to come alongside. We have fundraisers. We have golf tournaments. We'll have a golf tournament in Charlotte. And so any of you golfers out there that would like to play golf, we have that. That's another way to help us along the way. And then we have our annual banquets and stuff. So there's many ways. And there are volunteer opportunities as well.
Right. What are those volunteer opportunities look like?
So all over the place. But because we're a nonprofit private agency, we have to screen very well. Sure, so it's not like just showing up at the food bank. And so it's a little more, but we could use folks that would like to answer the phone We do have to do a screening process for anybody, so they are more limited than just a normal nonprofit.
Probably the volunteers that are going to be helpful with the ministry maybe are a little bit more skilled in some of those areas.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, and anybody can, like a golf tournament. We have churches that come alongside and want to just help us that day because it's a frantic day, getting one of those. So there's certain event opportunities for sure that come along, and then there's a few that we use, like the Birth Moms Retreat. We do have some things that we get ready for that. That if some folks wanted to come to our office and help us prepare for that, that's a pretty cool way to help too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to do something really weird here now. I've never done this before, and Joe, you're going to help me do it. But we're going to take a commercial break.
Okay, I love it.
Give people a break from this for just a second. But I think this would be a great time to, Joe, maybe just tell the church what we've got going on this Sunday morning. For the first time, you've been working a lot on this. So why don't you just...
we're going to do our first...
Get the camera there and talk to them.
Yeah, we're going to do our first drive-through church on... Sunday morning at 9 a.m. So we're going to be in the back parking lot.
Now, that doesn't mean show up at 9.
No, that's what time it starts.
Okay.
There will be some parking being done, so we're going to have that from 9 o'clock to 10. And you'll be able to, if everything goes well, you'll be able to tune into a certain radio station, 89.7, and listen to it. And if worse comes to worse, we'll have the speakers blasting, and you can hear those too. So, anyway, that's coming up this coming Sunday.
So, is that going to displace what we've been doing?
No, that's going to be the drive-through will be from 9 to 10, and then the regular online service will be from 10:30 to 11:30.
So we're not making any changes with the online service. I know that's a question that's come up over and over again, but that'll still be there. So so that's good. If you got any questions about that, Joe, let me give them your cell phone number and email and your home address and everything else. No, but seriously, if you got questions, just let us know. We'll be glad to answer those. Also, next Wednesday night.
Yeah, we plan on having another meal Wednesday night. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes.
Are you cooking?
I'm not cooking.
Okay.
No, that's Kathy does a great job with that. She don't want anybody messing with her kitchen. So.
Well, they've been a great blessing to our church through that. So that's been good. Any other updates that we need to maybe fill the church in on that would be good to share with them at this time?
I can't think of anything else right now.
All right. Okay. Well, if you do, we can share it at the end. But Kevin, just coming back, I'm going to put you on the spot here for a second. Okay.
Okay.
I've got a request from you.
Okay.
From Christian Adoption Christian Adoption Services.
Okay.
My wife and I want to adopt. No, I'm just joking. No, we want to adopt a grandchild. How's that? Yeah,
there you go.
No, seriously. I want to put you on the spot with this. Now, you send out your newsletter as an email.
Yes.
And I get that, and the ones in our church who have signed up for it get it. But we've got a service that we use. It's called Flocknote.
Okay.
And what that does, that allows us to type up an email and send that out to a large group with just one click. I don't have to type in all those email addresses. And what would be really helpful is when you've got a newsletter, or you've got communication that you're sharing with us, if there was a way to give us a website link or something, so that when we send out an email to the church, we can say, and here's a link to the latest newsletter from Christian Adoption Services.
I love that.
That way they can click on that and go straight to that.
I love that.
We can share it with the whole church that way.
That's great. Well,
otherwise, it's really tedious to try to
copy and paste
and all that.
So if I just send you a link, that can take care of that, and you can take.
You send us. In addition, I still want your newsletter, but if you were also able to send maybe include that in the newsletter. And here's if you want to view this, share it through that. Maybe at the bottom, here's a link, a website link to this newsletter.
Absolutely, so, we've got one going out in the next day or two, so that is perfect time for me to ask that question.
I don't think that we're unique in that. I think a lot of churches are using those mass email type things, and that might That might get the word out a little bit more with more people.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thanks. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so what? How is the situation with this coronavirus? How is that impacting Christian adoption services?
It's impacted us. The Lord's been good, though. He really has. We actually have moved. We were in the process of moving our offices from Matthews to Indian Trail, just 5 miles, but we're in the process of that, and that has taken place. The moving company, thank goodness, was considered essential. We were concerned about that, and we're essential because we're a nonprofit, and ministry keeps going. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and so we had to make the decision in the middle of March, when everything was picking up to close, to move everything to home offices. And so, and then we also been concerned with our workers who were going into hospitals and so forth. Right. But God continues to bless. So we are in and out of the office right now and different folks, but basically working at home. And then all of our social workers, they're still meeting with moms. They're still meeting with families. We've had to use Zoom and some other things now to meet with folks instead of going to their homes, and doing that even with birth moms. But we've had 5 babies.
I'm sure it's more sensitive with these moms being pregnant.
It is. And we have had 5 babies placed in since the middle of March. And so, again, been a little anxiety there. And I know a lot of nonprofits are certainly probably concerned or where we are, but God's protecting us and taking care of us, and we want to get back. I think there's going to be some things we learn from this of how we can do things better, and I think all of us are probably learning that. I don't really want to go back to normal. God is really, for me personally, I think the Lord, you can look at the scriptures and see things that are seemingly bad, God brings good out of it. Mm-hmm. And for me personally, I can tell you and Joe that God has really slowed me down a little bit. Because I'm just fast paced, wide over, preaching 2 times a month in churches, that I'm all over the place. But God's taught me a little bit of just spending more time in His Word. I spent more time in His Word in the last month than I probably did in the last year. Yeah. And for me personally, God was convicting me that, I've studied the Word all my life. I feel like I have a decent knowledge of God's Word, and I think maybe I leaned upon the past a little more than the refreshing encounter that God would want me to have. And so I personally don't want to go back to normal. Now, do I want to go back to restaurants? Absolutely. I want to go to the movies. I want, sports. I mean, I miss a lot of things. Yeah. But I think this quarantine time has been a time of blessing that God is teaching me some things and helping me be a better leader, a better husband, better father, as well. But it has affected us, and we believe that God's protecting the ministry through this. And we've had 44 churches along with Westport that have come alongside of us in the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm very thankful for the churches that, and praying for the churches that God will bless them during this time as well. We've not had one say we can't help, we have to stop supporting right now. And so, that may change if this thing extends further, and God's going to take care of His people. But God is blessing the ministry, and I believe that's a direct result because we stand on His Word.
Right.
Okay.
That's great. Well, now, one thing that we haven't really talked about yet, you didn't really say much about your family.
Yes.
And I don't want you to get in trouble.
That's true. That's true.
We've talked about all these important things, and that's so important
it is.
That you just hadn't gotten there yet.
Hadn't gotten there yet. Yeah. It is. So I've been married 25 years now, and my wife's a nurse, so she's keeping me, and it's been unique for her, Kim. We met at Gardner Webb and got married in 1994. And God has really blessed me with a wonderful, wonderful wife. But she's a nurse, and so she's been serving working in a surgery center. And that obviously got closed with just elective surgeries coming down to nothing.
Is that starting to open up again?
Soon, hopefully. So, again, everything lining up with Phase 1. They have a plan when Phase 1 gets put into place in North Carolina that they will. And it's a lot of restrictions, though, so it won't be normal. But, people need surgeries, and they've been putting them off now with this. But so she's been doing the telehealth thing. And so she's been going up to the surgery center, and there's a group of nurses, and they're dealing with video and phone calls with folks who are sick. But and so I'm very thankful for Kim and the opportunity she's had to continue to work through this whole thing. I've got 3 children, biological. I have Emma, who is a senior at NC State. So that's my joke. So I'm a Tar Heel fan. And then out of all the schools that Lord could have led Emma to, led her to NC State. So I've had to learn this this little whoop back thing. And so I don't have too much animosity toward Duke.
We got a couple of reprobates in our church.
Yes,
NC State
I know.
fans,
So anyways,
Mark,
I'm writing checks to NC State.
Yeah,
So Emma will be a senior at NC State next semester, and then my middle child Stephen, he just finishing his freshman year at Gardner Webb, which is where Kim and I went. And God's really doing a great thing in his life. And then Benjamin, my youngest, is a senior in high school and is figuring out where he's going to go. He's kind of narrowing in right now, and they've extended some of those deadlines to give him an opportunity to kind of think through. So I will be, it's funny, Kim and I were preparing for empty nest syndrome, and everybody's back, you know? I mean, so who knows what the fall may look like, you know? But yeah, God's blessed. We have 3 great children. They love the Lord. And God's using all of them in an amazing way. So I'm very proud of them. But time flies, man. It's just, you know, I'm 48 now, Steve. 48. Yes, sir.
I was 48.
48.
Yep. So, well, now, any predictions on how the, assuming that we do football this fall, how Duke and UNC game will go?
Well, I was very thankful this year. I wasn't at that game, but when Duke Cutcliffe decided to not run the ball and throw that pass right at the end zone, and Sherratt intercepted it and won the game for us, I was like, wow, that was a miracle to beat Duke. But this year we're rising. Now, I know Duke, I think, has a new quarterback. I think they're supposed to be, but our guy Sam Howell, and we're ranked. You know, he's from Charlotte, Indian Trail area. He was a freshman this past year. We're predicted. You know, I think we're preseason. You know, top 20. And so I'm feeling good.
Top 5 recruiting class right now.
Yep, and basketball and football. So we're, you know, we had a rough year in basketball. That was a tough year in basketball. But football wise, I feel good about it, and I hope they just get back out there, you know, and hopefully can have a season. But I'm really anticipating a good year for North Carolina. I think we have to go to Durham this year, go back over there for football. You never know how that looks like in football.
Well, what's your prediction for that game this year, Joe?
Well, Carolina is. They're pretty loaded this year, to be honest with you. I hate to admit it, but they are when it comes to football. When it comes to basketball, it's probably the other way around. But that game cost Duke a bowl bid last year.
Yeah, and it would have cost us a bowl bid because we went 6-6. Yeah. We wouldn't have made a bowl if we had lost that game. Yeah. So it ended up being a big game.
It doesn't matter whether it's football or basketball. It's going to be something like that. Last second touchdown pass or a.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, the only thing I remember about the Carolina basketball season this year is how many last-second defeats they had. But that's unbelievable.
They were snake bit, injury, everything worked against them.
Miracle shots, though. You know,
I was at the Virginia game.
I just sit there with my jaw dropped. I mean, I'm not like a Carolina fan, but I would watch some of them, and I'm just like,
you just wondering how.
Oh my God, how many times can this happen?
It's terrible. I remember being at Virginia game. I was behind the basket with UNC Virginia and Smith Center. I was behind the basket, and there was a timeout, and there was like, you know, 5 seconds left. We're up by 1, and I put my camera out to video the win, and the guard came down the court, went all the way around, and I think passed it to another kid in the corner, and he fired up a 3, and it went in at the buzzer, and I just sunk like this. Like, I don't want to show that video to anybody. It was rough. It was a rough year.
Yeah. Well, hey, as we kind of come to an end here, is there anything you'd like to talk to the camera there and say to the church?
Yeah, Westport, thank you. It's such a real blessing to be a part of an incredible church that is missionally focused and making a difference in not only Christian adoption services, but many other organizations. And the impact you're having, you know, I love sending Pastor Steve just a quick short video every quarter about what God is doing through the ministry. But we'll all come together in heaven one day and see the results of that. I know y'all have had impact here directly with one of your families with a sweet child that was placed several years ago. And to see that child grow up and be a part of this church and to come to know Christ at one day is going to be a special day as well. But I'm very thankful for all you do and your prayers, and your monthly giving means so much to us. And just know that you're an extension of all the rewarding things that I see every day through this ministry. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart. And feel free. We'd love for you to come by. If you're ever on the other side of Charlotte, come by and visit our new office and come see us. And Continue to pray for the ministry, though. We have a lot of opportunities, and I think this whole situation with the virus has allowed us to even have more opportunity to minister to moms that are in difficult places. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and we're here for you, and we're so thankful to be a partner of a great church.
Yeah. And I just add this one last thought regarding your ministry. It's kind of in the DNA of Westport to do this kind of ministry. A lot of people, even in our church, may not know this, but we've got a crisis pregnancy center here in the community, and that crisis pregnancy center actually started in this building right here.
Wow.
Years ago.
That's awesome.
And so, there's always kind of been that concern for the vulnerable children.
Yes.
And you look at the vulnerable children in the womb, whether it's through trying to make mothers aware of what they're about to do. I mean, when you've got 3,000 abortions
Yes.
in America today, each day, that's just, coronavirus doesn't come close to touching that.
No.
And that's just a terrible thing. And I remember Dr. Falwell when I was at Liberty. He would really take a strong stand against abortion, and they started a ministry, the Liberty Godparent Home up there, where they would bring unwed mothers in there. And I remember that they would ask him, well, you're against abortion, but what do you expect to do with all these babies and these moms? And he said, you bring them to me, I'll take care of them.
That's right.
And he was real serious about that.
Yes.
So whether it's trying to save those lives of those children, I read that the most dangerous place in America is in the womb of a mom.
Sad.
And that's where you're most likely to die on a daily basis. But whether it's trying to save those lives of those babies, what you're doing is going the next step.
That's
and
right.
Saying we not only want to say that we want to help them find a home.
That's right.
And there's parents out. There's more parents wanting children than there are children being adopted.
Absolutely.
So it's not like there's nowhere for these kids to
doubt.
go. So anyway, if you've got more questions for Kevin, we encourage you to contact him. And what's your website address?
Yeah, it's christianadopt.org.
christianadopt.org.
Yep.
Okay, and they can maybe send an email to info at...
Yeah, they can just send one, kevin@christianadopt.org, and I can answer that. I think info goes to one of our assistants as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Joe, anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you all tuning in today. I hope that this has been a blessing to you. We wanted to give you a chance to get to know one of our missionaries a little bit better. And we got a couple more interviews coming up over the next 2 weeks. I think next week we're going to be interviewing Mitch and Beth Calmes, and they're missionaries to Tanzania, Africa, that you also support. Then the following week we've got Jeff and Kim Abernathy, and they do ministry with students at University of North Carolina, Charlotte. So we're looking forward to those interviews, and I know that they're going to be a great blessing to you. And again, I just want to say, as always, that if there's a need that you have, give us a chance to try to meet that need. If it's something that you think it would be something that we should take a look at. And you can call the church, 704-483-1000, or you can send an email to info@westport.church, or put our names in front of that, joe@westport.church or steve@westport.church, whatever. And we'll get that, and we would love to speak with you and talk to you or pray with you. If you have a prayer request, you can call, send an email to one of us, or we've got an email address just for prayer@westport.church. So we want to be here for you. We want you to know that we love you, and we just need to remember that we may have a lot of things going on around us that we don't feel like that we've got control over. Things have happened that have maybe taken away our perceived control, and we feel like that we just don't know what's happening. But we need to remember this: God is still sovereign. Jesus is still Lord, and we still have a great commission. And none of that changes because of our circumstances. So thank you for tuning in with us today. And Kevin, why don't you just pray for our church as we close out? Would you do that?
Absolutely. Father, I thank you for this time. I thank you just for technology and the ability that we can come into folks' homes and wherever they are today and just share what's going on within the church and the ministry. And I thank you for Westport, and I pray you continue to bless Pastor Steve, Joe, and all those that are part of this amazing ministry. Continue just to unify them in you. And Lord, we look forward to the day of getting back together in some sense of normalcy of worship. And I pray you continue to watch over each person, help them to stay close in the Word, Lord. And I thank you again for the mission of this church to go and to reach those who don't know you as Lord and Savior.
That's right.
And Lord, the opportunity to be a blessing to mission organizations such as Christian Adoption Services, Lord, I'm very deeply thankful for the blessings of this church and our ministry. May we go before you and continue to be your church on mission out in our world to bring folks to know you and to be salt and light. Lord, we love you. Thank you again for this time, and may you bless us as we continue to serve you faithfully. We ask these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.